Okay, so a little more about Charlie. Once again, I'm Marini, and this is Charlie. Not sure if you're how your screen is organized, but Charlie is an author, trainer, and the director of Maximum Classics. And she is a graduate of University College London's Department of Greek and Latin. Charlie has taught Latin and classics across London state primary and secondary schools. And before going into teaching, she worked in publishing and digital content industries and uses this experience to develop and promote classics-related classroom materials such as Maximum Classics, Mega Greek, and Bezo Batrachos. She takes a special interest in helping primary school children access classics and develop a lifelong love of the subject. Oh, Charlie.
I really love the word de-ossification. Number one, because it's got gorgeous Latin roots, but really because that is exactly what my life's mission is. I was very lucky in that I was a scholarship girl, so I got to learn Latin because I got put into a school that I wouldn't have been able to have gone to sort of financially, but I got a scholarship. And kind of ever since then, I've had a bit of a bee in my bonnet about taking the education to the children and not bringing the children to the education. So this is what my sort of life's work is all about, and specifically in the fields of Latin, Greek, and the ancient world in general. So in the course of educating other teachers about the joys of teaching Latin and Greek, I found that a really compelling argument for teaching Latin and Greek was the fact that it really supported the acquisition and strengthening of English vocabulary in younger students and also in students who don't have English as a first language. So this is my touchstone upon which all of my Latin and Greek work is built. But in addition to that, I've also sort of like hived off a lot of what I'm calling the word roots approach. And I talk to teachers about it, and I create resources that they can use in their classrooms without actually having to go as far as teach Greek and Latin, although I will always try and twist their arm to do that because it's really good fun. Tiny bit of housekeeping, if that's okay. I'm just checking everybody's got their names on the screen. If you were here earlier, you heard me talking about how I love when people have their names up because I can call you by your name, which is nice. I can see only one iPad here, so I'll just call you iPad if you don't want me to call you by your real name. Otherwise, change it. The other thing I will say is, because it's a biggish room, if you all go on mute, which you all are, fantastic, but if you put your chat box open, please, because this is a very interactive seminar, as I'm going to be firing out questions and you're going to be responding in the chat box, and there are also going to be 3 breakout rooms. Now, so 3 breakout sessions. Hopefully you all have those breakout session PDFs that I think are sent through. So you can either use those offline, you can print them out and work from them offline to give yourself a bit of a screen break. Excellent, well done, Lauren. Or you can work off the screen. I'll leave the exercise on the screen. Normally I do these breakout tasks in groups, but because we're sort of all from disparate locations, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to assign you a group, and I may split you arbitrarily as well. You'll see what I mean in a minute. Okay, I'm going to try and share. Let's see how this goes. Okay. Can everybody see this? Give me a nice thumbs up if you can see this. So I'm just looking for my chat. Okay, fantastic. All right, lovely. So what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to take about an hour to do it, is we are going to have a wee chat about how you can be practical in the way that you use a little bit of learning to help introduce the word roots approach to your students and their acquisition of vocabulary, and also a little bit their spelling as well. So we're going to take a brief overview of the English language, starting with what a horrid but glorious language it is. It's a very, very tricky one to master. Then we're going to look at why and look at where the English language comes from. Now, I don't know how it is in the US, but in the UK, this kind of thing doesn't get taught as standard. But actually, as soon as you explain to children the sort of like the history, the background of the language they speak, they start to understand things a bit better. We're then going to talk about tiers of vocabulary. Again, a lot of UK research splits language into sort of brackets of complexity, and I'm going to talk about how that interfaces with word roots. I'm not going to go so much into the brain and language processing, mainly because I can bore for Britain on it, because I find it really interesting. And I'm sure Irene is too polite to say, shush, Charlie, you're boring everybody. But there are some lovely links between brain processing and language. And actually, we're going to use that later as a bit of a leapfrog, a springboard to do a creative exercise in a breakout task. And then, because I have been on the ground, I have taught for so many years, we're going to talk about how you can take this knowledge and operationalize it in the classroom, not just strategies, but also resources that you can get hold of. Okay, let's talk about the English language. Is there anybody, and give me a little wave, who did not learn English as their very first language? They learned it as a second or third language. Yes, so Judith, okay, fantastic. It's quite often these people who have a deep appreciation of how complex the English language is. Let's have a look at a little example of this. Here is a word. The word is bomb. Yes, I think we can all read that and say that the word there is bomb. So if we're kind of following, if we're following lexical rules, this word should say Tom, but it doesn't. It says tomb. Okay, so the OMB is making an sound. So this should say coomb. It doesn't. It says comb. So surely this says home, the place where we live. Oh no, 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 that would be too simple. This is how we spell home. So if we substitute the H for an S, this should say some. It does not. It says some. Where are the rules in English? They seem to be broken all the time. Some. So does this say num? No, it doesn't. We've got to get a different vowel and we've got to get that wretched silent B back again. So it just means that the English language can leave learners, be they acquiring as a second language or early stage first language acquirers, it can leave them feeling pretty dumb. Okay, so that's just a little illustration about how irregular the English language is. And that is for a very, very good reason. And it's all to do with history, and it's all to do with this fair isle being conquered on a fairly regular basis. First of all, I'm going to talk about some sort of sprinkles in the English language, not the main meat of the English language, but just the kind of things that kind of sprinkle on top, and there's just lovely little added extras. But again, these all come from periods in history. So in English, we have quite a lot of words, quite often scientific words that come from ancient Greek. Words like thermometer, telephone, geography. These are words that sometimes came through Latin because the Romans loved pilfering the old Greek word, especially if it sounded clever. But they are words that quite often were coined during a period of scientific revolution. So say the 17th, 18th centuries onwards. Foundational texts, science texts, were in Greek. So quite often those scientists would go back to Greek to actually name new phenomena and new inventions. So tele, far away, phonos, sound, thermo, heat or hot, meter, measurement. We also have some words in English from Hindi. The less said about the British Empire, the better. But this is kind of one of the things that, just one of the things we picked up. Shampoo, jungle, khaki, because they've just got a different flavour. They just feel different. Their spellings are kind of different. We also have some lovely words that have come from Arabic, mainly due to trade routes through Europe. Words like candy, orange, ghoul, which is a great word. Again, you can see they feel a little bit different. But the meat of the English language, or to use a slightly different culinary metaphor, the two layers of the cake are different to those little sprinkles. The biggest layer, the bottom layer, is Anglo-Saxon. So this is the group of Germanic languages that were brought to Britain in the 6th to 10th centuries CE, when the Angles, the Saxons, the Jutes, the Danes came over, and the Nordics to some extent, and settled in Britain. Words like daughter, foot, it could be live, it could be live, and water. So these are words that are fairly foundational in the English language. They tend to be short, but they can be tricky to spell. That is because the word daughter would not have been pronounced daughter for its duration. If you go back 1,000 years, it would have sounded more like daughter, so you'd have heard more of the sounds that are there in the spelling. So you quite often see tricky vowel combinations, silent letters from words that come from Anglo-Saxon. The other big bit of the cake for the English language is French. This is a relic of when England was conquered by the Normans in 1066 by William the Conqueror. So words that come to us from Norman French include animate, pedestrian, aquatic. So these are words that are just, I just like to call them a bit fancier. They're a bit more ambitious synonyms of other words that you might have in your Anglo-Saxon toolkit. So you can see water and aquatic, you can see foot and pedestrian, animate and live. So if you have a look at those words, they in themselves have their own roots in Latin, because of course the Romans left the British shores a lot sooner than they left continental Europe. So what we now know as the Romance languages, which are Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, Romanian, and French, are actually direct descendants evolved from the Latin language. So we can see the correlation here. So your anima in Latin is your soul or your spirit, turns to animer, to bring to life in French, and then that turns to animate in modern English. Your pedes are your feet in Latin, which turns into les pieds in French, which then doesn't necessarily mean feet, but it's got a connection with feet in the word pedestrian. This is where you do your first bit of work. In the chat box, PED words that have a connection with feet or legs. Let's see how many we can get. Lovely. Pedometer, pedal, pedestal, pedicure. Fantastic. Love it. Pediatrician. Oh, do you know what? I think this is where cultural differences come out, because in English we spell that P-A-E because it comes from paidos, meaning child in ancient Greek. So sometimes the Latin and ancient Greek fight a bit. Podiatry it is, because the pod bit is actually the ancient Greek root for foot. Centipede, millipede, yeah, 100 legs, 1,000 legs, fantastic. All right, let's do one more. Aqua means water in Latin, which then translates through to modern English as aquatic. Can you think of any other aqua words and pop them in the chat box? Aquarium, super. Aquifer, very good, a carrier of water. Aqueduct, lovely. Aquamarine, a watery blue colour. Any more for any more? Aquarius, the water carrier, perfect. Aquatic is another one. And my favourite is a very fancy word for watercolour paints. You may have heard it, aquarelles. That's what the French call watercolours. Okay, perfect. So, moving on. We have this kind of weird setup now in English where quite often there is more than one word for a concept. So we have pedestrian, but we can also say walker. Now you get the pedestrian, the longer, more regularly spelled but fancier word from the French Latinate side of things, and you get the solid everyday, perhaps with a dodgy spelling, bit shorter from our friends over in the Anglo-Saxon world. Same with aquatic. It's a very different flavour to watery, but they kind of have a similar meaning. Transported, anything that's trans is going across and port is carry. But instead in English, we have brought. Look at that absolutely undelightful O-U-G-H combination. So, oh, question from Andy. Are most Latin words not derived directly from ancient Greek? Oh dear. Could bore you for half an hour on that one. Some are, yes, but some are not. I'm gonna stop there, Irene, because this is another seminar about the origins of the Latin language. But yes, a bit is the answer. Right, we're going to do our first breakout task. We have got 5 columns of words. Okay, if your first name begins with the letter A, B, C, D, E, or F, you're going to take column 1. If your name starts with G, H, I, J, or K, we're going to do column 2. L to P is column 3. Q to U is column 4. I suspect I've goofed there because there's probably not going to be anybody there. But V to Z is going to be column 5. It doesn't matter if we do all the columns. So what you're going to do is you're going to look at those 10 words that have been given to you in your column. 5 have their roots in the Anglo-Saxon side of English, and 5 have their roots in the French Latinate side of English. What you're going to do is you're going to work out which are which, using the rule of thumb that we just found out. Short, punchy, everyday, but possibly a little bit tricky to spell, Anglo-Saxon. Bit fancier, maybe a bit longer, but regularly spelled, French Latinate. Okay? Can anyone just give me a thumbs up to let me know that you're happy with that task? Awesome. I'm going to give you 2 minutes for the task, in which time I am going to go and top up my water, and then we'll come back and we'll discuss. Okay, hopefully you didn't find that too tricky, because this rule of thumb really does work. So let's go to group 1. That's the A to Fs. I have a lot of choice from the A's to the Fs. I am going to go for, please, Andy Perrott. Hello. You can unmute yourself and you can tell which categories you sorted the words into.
Okay, I put Anglo-Saxon as think, new, thrown, look, and snow.
100% correct. Absolutely. Yeah. Again, you kind of do this a little bit with the feelings, but you're absolutely right. Well done, Andy. I hope all you other A to Fs got that. Perfect. All right. Let's take group 2, the G to the Ks. Have I got any G's or K's? Yes, I've got Joy. Hello, Joy. Would you like to unmute?
Hello.
And hello, Joy. I really think that I've not been terribly sensible in my splitting up of these. But anyway, let's give it a go. Joy, can you take column 2 and tell us which you think belong to which?
Okay, I think the Anglo-Saxon ones look like work, overpower, day, good, and shield.
Yeah, sounds about right to me. Yeah, so we've got some Latinate words there. Manipulate. Have I got the same sheet as you? Have I given a new sheet?
No, sorry, I thought that was the Anglo-Saxon. I didn't fully understand the task at the beginning, so
Okay,
I gave you what I thought were the Anglo-Saxon ones.
I've got you. No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So, but if we look at column 2 on the screen there, if we look at the if we look at the word work, what does that feel like to you? Anglo-Saxon or French?
Yeah, Anglo-Saxon, yes.
Correct. But then again, if we go down to and we look at the word labor, which is a synonym for work, really, does that feel more Anglo-Saxon or does that feel more...
No, that's Latin, labor, laboris.
Excellent, fantastic. Okay, so you can see the rule of thumb working there. L to P. Let's have a look at L to P. Who have we got? We have got... This is the problem with having lots of people in a room. Lakeisha. You fancy having a go at number 3, Lakeisha?
Good morning. I think for column 3, the Anglo words are probably first.
Yep.
Girl.
Yep.
Milk.
Yep.
Give.
Yep.
And maybe prime. I was kind of torn on prime.
It's not, it isn't. I tell you what, there's a word in that column that's got a really irregular plural ending, which is another indication that it's Anglo-Saxon. So normally when we pluralize nouns, we put an S on the end, but this is a plural without an S on the end. Can you see where it is?
Kind of taking a look, thinking about it. Maybe children?
Correct. It's children. Yes. Yeah. And again, that's a fairly foundational word in the English language, isn't it? Or actually in any language. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Lakeisha. Right. So QRSTU. Who we got? QRS. Tim Rowlands.
Hello.
Hello, Tim. Tim, your room seems to be the same colour as my room. You have excellent taste.
Okay. I think the Anglo-Saxon ones are through, bread, brew, length, and sea.
Yeah, perfect. Well done. Yeah, see, easy peasy. Excellent. And then our final group, column 5, VWXYZ. There's a Zoe. I've got to have the Zoe, sure. Zoe, could you kindly take column 5 and separate the sheep from the goats?
The Anglo-Saxon, I think, are water, king, love, hat, meat.
Perfect. Well done. Wonderful. So you can see just on that tiny little illustration that it's very obvious once you know a little bit about the history of the English language, it's very obvious to see how the English language sort of splits down the middle, falls into these 2 camps. I'm going to do a little bit of a diversion now and talk about tiers of vocabulary. So tiers of vocabulary in any language talks about the kind of words that are most frequently used and most important in acquisition of a language. So we always start with tier 1. And tier 1 in English consists of about 8,000 basic words. That's not actually all that many, but if you master these 8,000 words, you can communicate in English fairly effectively. Tier 2, you see them slightly less, and there are slightly fewer of them, so less in number, less in frequency. But it's comparable to tier 1. There are about 6,000 of these words, and I'm going to call them mature use words. They're words that you use to build onto tier 2. Tier 3, there are, in English, around 400,000 of these words. They're very low frequency, and that is because they are very specific words. They're very subject specific. Yeah. So, given what we know about the English language and the roots of the English language and the periods of history in which English language has influenced our kind of the way we speak and our vocabularies, can you have a guess and put in the chat box which language root, French Latinate or Anglo-Saxon, you think tier 1 words come from? Excellent. You are all having the correct instinct. They tend, it's not hard and fast rule, but they do tend to come from the Anglo-Saxon root. Okay, perfect. Tier 2, have a stab at where these words come from. Put it in the chat box. Excellent. So these are the words that come from French, Latin. The reason why these words tend to be fancier is simply because when the Normans invaded, they took the land, they were the lords, they were the clergy, they were the people who were important, they were the lawyers, they were the people who knew how to write, they were in charge. So they kind of established this sort of like highfalutin vocabulary. Okay, perfect. Let's put those folks there then. Now, these guys also contribute a lot to these tier 3 subject specific words, but there's another language that I kind of touched on in our that very first tree diagram we saw that these words come from. So they're low frequency, very, very specific, sometimes quite sciencey words. Can you have a guess? Yeah, fantastic. Ancient Greek. And the correlation between ancient Greek and science is so strong, and it can be a really powerful tool in teaching students to be able to decode scientific vocabulary. We're going to have a little look at that in our second breakout task, but just in the meantime, just as a little illustration, and I'm not going to over-egg this, I have got some examples of text that is predominantly tier 1, and then we're going to move on to tier 2 and tier 3. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to put you in the shoes of a 7-year-old who can't access every single word that they can sort of phonetically read out. Andy, question.
It was more just to say something that really intrigued me. There's no naming names. There's a girl who's doing ancient Greek at the moment, and she says that doing that has actually helped her to understand English. And I found that fascinating. I thought that was great.
I'll give you an anecdote. I taught a boy in year 8, so from the age of 12, and he had lived all around Europe, and he acquired English as his 13th language. He was originally from Romania. We couldn't communicate in English, but he was determined to do my Latin class. He did my Latin class, and he rose from the bottom English set to the second from top English set. I'm not claiming all of it, but it had a lot to do with it. And in his GCSE Latin, he got a 6, which is like a B, which was amazing. So, Andy, I completely agree. I think having a little bit of ancient language improves your vocabulary in English monumentally. It really does. That's kind of why I'm here. I just wish one day it'd be really nice to actually get a proper study to show. There are a few studies, but yeah. Oh, we need some hard data on this. Okay, perfect. So this little excerpt here is from a tabloid newspaper in England called the Daily Mail. It writes for a fairly, or is it the Sun? I can't remember, but it's a tabloid newspaper that has a very low reading age. So they deliberately write so it's accessible for all of their readers. I think the reading age is 8 or 9. So if you have a reading age of about 8 or 9, you're probably not going to be able to access all of the tier 2 vocabulary. But there is just so much tier 1 vocabulary that you can infer from context what that unknown vocabulary is. So, for example, if we look at that first word, heart-stopping footage this morning of a Ryanair flight at Leeds Bradford Airport. Just for context, Ryanair, is a very cheap UK carrier. So if anything goes wrong with it, it's kind of not a surprise. So have a guess, put in the chat box what you think that first blue blank might be. Yeah, Victoria, that'll do. Appeared, yeah. Emerged, surfaced, landed, unlike the plane. Actually, no, the plane did land, didn't it? Okay, perfect. But it kind of doesn't matter because it's kind of a placeholder. You can work everything out from context. Here we go. Let's see what it was. Oh, it is emerged. Okay, perfect. It doesn't really matter though, because there's so little vocab that isn't tier 1. However, as kids start accessing more ambitious texts, texts with more archaic language, for example, they have to be able to access tier 2 words. Now, here you can see that there's a lot more tier 2 vocabulary here. Definitely prize for anybody who can off the bat recognize where this is from. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. It's a set text for GCSE exams in the UK. Right, okay. But again, oh, my boxes have slipped a bit. There's less context, so it gets harder and harder to infer those words. Okay. When you get to texts that incorporate tier 3 vocabulary, so technical scientific vocabulary, if you don't know what those words mean, all bets are off. This is a page from a revision booklet for the exam for GCSE geography, so the exam that 16-year-olds take in the UK. If you don't know what the words mean, you're not going to pass your exam. End of story. So enabling students to access these higher tiers of vocabulary is kind of one of the main raison d'etre of teachers, be they English teachers or indeed be they maths teachers, science teachers, geography teachers, history teachers, whatever. We're going to focus on science because we're going to have a little play around with some Greek. So I have put here 12 Greek roots that frequently pop up in English technical and scientific words. And we're going to do in a minute a breakout task where we have to decode, hopefully words you don't know the meaning of, by looking at the roots and working out how that relates to its meaning. But let's do a couple of examples. Okay, I know that you all know what an amphibian is, but can you put in the chat box the 2 root words you can see that make up the word amphibian? Raminda, you must be some really, really fast typer. That's impressive. Amphi and bio, perfect. Okay, because of course, an amphibian is something that can live both on land and in water, e.g. frog. There we go. Go away, frog. Okay, let's try a slightly more challenging one. Hypodermic. Now, again, through experience, especially having just gone through a pandemic, I'm sure you all know what hypodermic means because you associate it with another word. I've somehow telepathized that question across the internet and you're all coming up with the right answer. It's hypo, which means under in Greek, or hupo, and derm, which is something to do with skin. Okay, that was too easy for you guys, so I'm going to stretch and extend you, and I'm going to do it like this. Into the chat box, put as many words as you can think of that have derm in them and a connection to skin. Lovely. Dermatology, dermatitis. Anything with itis in is like a disease of. Pachyderm, my favorite. No one ever gets that one. Excellent. Dermatology, epidermis, and of course the dermis as well. Lovely. Super. Let's have some hypo words. Not hyper, because that means above. This is why it's good for spelling. Hypo, below, hyper, above. Some hypo words. This is a bit trickier. Oh, not tricky for you guys. Hypertonic, hypothermic, hypoallergenic. Perfect. Well done. My favorite, oh, hypercaust, yeah, the heating system under, yeah. Hypoxia, when you don't have enough oxygen in your system, perfect. There's loads of lovely medical hypo words, hypotension and hypertension. Right, okay, perfect. Right, now it is 100% over to you guys. This is your second breakout task. You have got those same 12 roots at the bottom of your breakout sheet. So once we've seen bio, hypo, amphi, and but you've got others as well, like pod, foot, therm, heat, tetra, for, mega, big. At the top of your page, you have got some words. Now, you guys seem pretty smart, so you probably do know what some of them mean. However, see if you can find any you don't know the meaning of, and see if you can connect them to their definitions that are arrayed in the middle there. Okay? See if you can do that and take 5 minutes to... No, actually, you're not going to need that long. I think 3 minutes is enough for you guys. You don't have to do them all, but just pick a few and see if you can match them up. I am going to go and get another drink of water because completely atypically for the UK, it is currently blazing sunshine and I'm getting it right in my face and it is very hot in here. See you in 3 minutes. Okay, hopefully everyone's got about 1 or 2. And also hopefully it illustrated how having access to a few, those 12 roots can actually help with some pretty gnarly language. Let's go through it. I'm just going, shall I be evil teacher? And I'm just going to pick on people. Jay Resnick. I love your backdrop. Is it real? Are they real books? Okay, good. All right, Jay, if you could unmute yourself, it would be really fantastic if you could pick a word that, hand on heart, you didn't know the meaning of, but you managed to work out because of the roots.
A gauge that measures small distances or thicknesses is a micrometer.
Excellent, well done. You've got the micro and the meter. Okay, can you think of any other words that have micro in them that have something to do with small?
Microscope.
Yeah, brilliant. It helps you to scope in to look at micros, things that are small. Fantastic. Thank you, Jay. I'll take one more. I'm just trying to think who I've not picked on. Alexandra, please. And the reason I'm picking on you is because the fan going behind you draws my attention to your picture. So bad luck for that. And also I'm jealous. I wish I had one because it's baking in here. Anyway, so tell Alexandra, a definition you managed to match up.
Well, we're in Florida first, so we have central AC, and still we have the fan going because it's so hot outside. I would say tetrameter. That's the easy one for me as an English teacher, right? In poetry, a verse of 4 measures.
Yeah, perfect. Now, because you're an English teacher, you can tell me what a verse with 5 measures is.
Pentameter.
And with 3 measures?
Trimeter.
And with 6 measures.
Oh, wait, I get those confused. Is it hexa or?
Yeah, it's hexameter. Absolutely. And the second that you make that connection for your students between polygons, which they've known since they were 7, and meters, they go, oh yeah, no, I'm never going to forget what a pentameter is now because I know what a pentagon is, and they can make that connection. If I were doing the in-depth psycholinguistics version of this, and possibly boring you to tears, I could explain the mechanisms behind that, but there are some really strong mechanisms between these associations of roots and future accessibility of vocabulary. Thank you, Alexandra. Perfect. Okay, so hopefully you all found that not too tricky. Although I've made it as tricky as possible because this is designed for you guys as teachers. The third breakout task we do is actually something that I use in the classroom. But this one is designed to be a bit extra tricky for you. Okay. So now you know a little bit about the English language. You understand why it is. You understand how useful word roots are. How can you operationalize this information in your classroom? The first thing to do, and it's the first thing that I do on my Latin and Classics course, is to teach pupils about the roots of the English language. Explain why. The whole idea of etymology. One of the consistent pieces of feedback I have from teachers who teach my Latin course, but also my word roots course, is that students start to make connections spontaneously. They develop this curiosity about words. And you know what? This is where Google is your best friend, because you can put a word and then the word etymology into the search bar, and Google comes up with a lovely tree of where that word is believed to have come from. We don't always know, but sometimes it's just fascinating. And to spark a curiosity about language, I think, is a really invaluable thing to do when children are sort of under your educational care. Yeah, I used to read the dictionary when I was little, but then again, it was a bit different. But using fun ways of exploring word roots is another way of doing things. There are some systematic teaching programs out there. I just mentioned Google. There's a really good new program called Vocabulous that's just launched here in the UK. Again, there'll be links going out. Irene, I can put these, I can put a whole bunch of links together for you. There are also some really good books and systematic programs as well. In the classroom, I like to collect words together, do a bit of word hoarding, get students, again, enthusiastic about words and, looking out for them and actively bringing them to you. You can even then start grouping them by etymology. Something I've worked on a lot in the last couple of years is developing subject-specific approaches. So I have a lot of contact with schools in the UK. And if, for example, they are teaching a topic, so quite often schools in the UK will teach a history topic, a science topic, or a geography topic, they will come to me and say, can you make a word roots pack for this? So you can see there on the screen, most recent ones I've done have been space and the rainforest. So a word roots pack will be either looking at a theme or looking at an actual root word. There for space, we have a couple of posters and 3 worksheets. So again, I'll give you access to download all of these. It's also really lovely to be able to make the connection between various European languages and Latin as well. So I've also put some resources to help with that. I'm always going to advocate teaching even just a little bit of a Latin or even just a little bit of ancient Greek, because they're fun and they really give that depth of understanding of the English language. I'm not going to talk at length about Maximum Classics today. If you want to know more, give me a shout and I will chew your ear off about it. Otherwise, go to the website and you can download the first unit of teaching for free to evaluate it. But it's a Latin course that pivots around the utility of word roots and improving English vocabulary. Irene and I were talking about this just before you guys all came in, and it's all about joy, you know, positive effect, enjoying, having a real kind of positive response to the learning that you're doing. And I like to encourage playfulness with word roots, including making up new words. Okay? This is something that if it's good enough for Shakespeare, it's good enough for us. And I think it's a lovely thing to do. Not only are we doing analysis, but then we're flipping it, improving it, and doing synthesis as well. And it's just damn good fun. So what you can see here, I've got quite a lot of resources that are all to do with understanding roots and then recombining them. You've got an example there of a mythical monster one I've got, and you can see that I can't remember who did this particular one, they've not put their name on it, but they have invented a hippocycle, which is a very round horse. Yeah. And you can combine those and then you can illustrate them and you can have lots of fun. And this is what we are going to do right now. Let's give you a little preamble. You probably wondered why I put a tube of Aquafresh toothpaste up on the screen. Well, there's Latin everywhere. A Magnum ice cream. And this guy, anyone want to put in the group chat what this guy's name is? I've got two boys, so it's been inflicted on me for the last 20 years. Optimus Prime. So good, they gave him two Latin names, okay? So all of these products, and they are products, were invented in the 20th or 21st century. Actually, no, they're all 20th centuries, aren't they? They were all invented and marketed, more importantly, in the 20th century onwards. And yet they draw their names from Latin words. Magnus is big, aqua means water, and Optimus means best. Now, it's not like the Mad Men in New York or the ad folks in Soho in London are thinking, oh, well, we know everybody understands Latin. No, 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 no. But what they do understand is how word roots are baked into our language. They know that whenever you see a word that has M-A-G-N in, subconsciously in our brains are activated the word nodes such as magnify, magnitude, magnificent, all have excellent positive correlations and quite often correlations about size, okay? Equally, Aquafresh, well, you might not have known that aqua meant water, but you will know aquatic, aquarium, and your experience of that has created a link that makes you think of water subconsciously. Water, cleanliness, a really good thing to associate with toothpaste. And when you see optim, you're thinking of optimal, optimize, optimist, things that are generally good. What a great name for the leader of the goodies. Fantastic. So even today, in modern times, people are using Latin to get people to engage with and buy stuff. And this is exactly what we're all going to do now. Now, this is a direct lift from one of my student worksheets, one of my lessons. We have got a whole bunch of Latin roots there, and we are going to play a game of Dragon's Den. Irene, is it called Dragon's Den in the US? No, it's called Shark Tank, isn't it? Excellent, perfect. Okay, so we're going to play a game of Shark Tank / Dragon's Den, or maybe Dragon's Tank or Shark's Den, where we're going to invent and pitch a new product. And we're going to use Latin to create the name of our product. Then if we have time, we'll sketch it. And then we're going to give a little upsell in words for it. Let me give you an example. I am going to choose the root can and the root per. Okay, so I'm going to create a product that has something to do with dogs and something to do with cleanliness. So let me put those together. I can put them together in any way I want. Quite often you need a little vowel to put them, you know, nicely together. So I'm just going to do that. I'm going to invent Canipure. Now, it's got to have something to do with dogs, something to do with cleanliness. So this is my product description. Has your dog fallen in a bog? Pooch too stinky to smooch? If you're having trouble with a smelly dog, try new Canipure. And there we go. It's a special dog wash that makes your dog smell extra fragrant so you can snuggle up to him all night long. Okay? And this is what you guys are going to do now. Oop, I'm not going to advance from there. You're going to do exactly that. You're going to take two roots, synthesize them, and creatively come up with a pitch for what your product is. Now, this is the one that normally works best in groups when there's group work on it. But I know you guys are all sort of like, you know, all dialing in separately. Have a go, have some fun. I'll give you 5 minutes for this task. And then when we come back, I'm not going to pick on anybody because this is creativity and it's not nice to be picked on if you're not feeling creative. We'll come back and then I will ask for volunteers to enter the Shark Tank Dragon's Den and to pitch their products. See you in 5 minutes. Okay, we've already had one great invention in the meeting chat. Thank you, Nancy. That's fantastic. We've got an extra magi in there for an extra magic sleep. I used to do an example where I did was it Somnican? And then one teacher, oh, you did Somnican. I did Somnican, and I used to illustrate it with a dog like that. And I was maybe told I was a bit insensitive to the dog owners. They would never drug their dogs, but okay. So does anyone want to unmute and pitch their product? Go on then, Andy, let's hear it.
Right, you ready for this? It's a product called Sansomnifant. Does your child have nightmares? One drop of Sansomnifant each night will ensure a healthy night's sleep for your infant.
Very good. I think they took they used to actually have that on the market when my kids were little. They're taking it off. I think got roundly abused by British parents. Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Yeah. Everybody know, what was it? Oh, gosh, what was it called? I can't remember what it was called. Medisaid, that was it. That came off the market. Right, okay. Yeah, I know, we're all talking about sleep, aren't we? Usually we all it's interesting. I used to do another version of this with teachers, and I had the root porky in it, which was to do with pigs, and guaranteed at least 80% of the answers would have something to do with eating sausages or ham or bacon, and they would have porky in them. I've taken porky out because it was just dominating, but maybe the sleep, yeah. Okay, fantastic. All right. Is anybody else who would like to unmute and share their invention?
I see a couple in the chat.
Go for it, Irene.
I'm looking at the ones in the chat. Lauren,
yeah.
Lauren has Durasam to sleep, perchance to dream, wishing to be lulled by the lethargic Lotophagus into the lap of Morpheus. Nothing could be sweeter or more long-lasting than Durasam. As Horai once said, dulce e decorum eat pro patria.
Est, I think it's auto-corrected you, hasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And the font is very tiny. And then
I'm guessing Lauren doesn't need converting to the classics. She seems pretty well versed in it, Lauren, aren't you?
Yeah. Sorry, I was supposed to be Horace too. It switched out, but Horace once said dulce decorum est pro patria. Snorri.
Thank you.
So
very good. Very, very good.
Between auto connect and the tiny font, my reading was not. And then Zoe, which again, frightened to read it in case I'm misreading or in case autocorrect has done its work, but Duratep for the cold morning walks to school. I like that.
But what is it? Is it a drug? Is it a hand warmer? Is it a scarf? Zoe, what is your product?
Long-lasting warmth. So yeah, that is.
I feel like it could be a hand warmer.
A hand warmer. That's a very good name for a hand warmer. Very good.
We could use our Amphi for that too. We could get the Amphi in there somehow.
So, anyone else, or we'll move on, because sometimes there are people just bursting to tell us their product. No one's bursting. We will move on. Fantastic. I say move on. We're pretty much done now. Although, if you have questions, please ask away, unmute yourselves, put them in the chat box, whatever you feel most comfortable with. I've put my contact details there. My two websites are word-roots.com and maximumclassics.com, which has got Latin, Greek, and word roots on it as well. And I sometimes feel a bit of a fraud for saying this, but I've been told by my business consultant, if I don't do it, she's going to shout at me. I'm on Instagram at maximum_classics. So you can follow me. I sometimes pop up interesting word roots things, but I also give info about all the latest sort of Latin-y and Greek-y things that I'm up to as well. So you can follow what's going on there. Any questions?
Are you on Blue Sky at all?
No, I am not. I am a digital reticent. No,
Me
sorry, a
too.
social media reticent, because I was very active on Twitter until, you know,
Yeah.
it went horrible. And I've just found that I can't find people that I used to enjoy reading tweets from, and nobody sees me. And I'm just like, you know what, let this particular thing work itself out, and I'll come back when it's all sorted.
It's just I'm very anti social media. It's just full of too many numpties. But I tried Blue Sky when it first came out, and it just seems like the whole of classics has moved over to Blue Sky, and it's
Okay, that's good
really
to know.
good.
Sorry for all of you non-Scottish speaking folk. Andy, would you like to say what a numpty is?
A numpty, it's an idiot.
Oh, that's funny. We also have a question in the chat. Could you offer a quick, I'm going to assume that's rule of thumb maybe, for the difference among Anglo-Saxon, French, and Latin?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, in terms of what the English language is, it's what I said earlier. It's like foundational tier 1 everyday language. And I hasten to add, swear words are all Anglo-Saxon, except for one. And I'm not even going to tell you what that one is, because I would be booted off this platform straight away. But then you're sort of like fancier, more legal, more academic words tend to be French Latinate, but they tend to be more regularly spelled. So that is my rule of thumb, I would say.
I think that the spelling one is really helpful, I think.
Yes, it is. It is. And in fact, if you sort of, the deeper you go into learning Latin, the more it really helps your spelling, actually, and Greek as well, to an extent.
I'm actually just starting to learn, I've done quite a lot of Greek, and I'm just starting to learn Latin. I kind of steered away from it because I'm a Greek fan rather than a Latin fan,
It doesn't have to be a binary, you can love both.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm still a preference for the Greeks, but that's another story. I'm starting that during the summer, so I actually, through recommendation, just bought myself that.
Yeah, lovely.
Which is why I got interested in this when it came up, and I thought, well, word roots really does help you learn a new language,
Yeah. Oh, Zoe, do we tend to pronounce things in a way which is influenced more by Latin than Anglo-Saxon if we find the Anglo-Saxon words harder to spell? Wow, what a great question. It depends where you come from as well, because in the UK, our accents vary wildly depending on where we come from. In a way, it's kind of a little bit too in the mists of time to make a massive difference. But if you go up to somewhere like Northumberland, it feels a lot more like, the pronunciation feels a lot more sort of Nordic. My brother and his family live in Norway, and sometimes when my Norwegian niece and nephew speak English, they either sound like they come from Newcastle or Aberdeen. So the pronunciation on the sort of like the west side of Britain is a lot more influenced by the Scandies and by the Germanic side of things.
That's what, when we were discussing the English language, that's what I was talking about to somebody the other day. And it kind of stemmed, I don't know how copyrighted this is, but it kind of stemmed from that thing. Is that almost like your tree, but it's a branch out of the language, how it's come through and then branched out into French, German, Spanish.
Yeah. Again, in the super mega long version of this seminar that I do, I also talk about Proto-Indo-European languages, which, there is a common root to all Indo-European languages, and we talk about that as well. So it doesn't just go back as far as Latin, it goes back a bit further than that. But you have to draw the line somewhere.
Yeah. I tell you what helps me overcome some difficulty sometime. I'm especially when I'm doing Greek and I'm looking at all these things, and then the rules that you learn, and then all of a sudden the rule flips itself in its head, and you go, why are they doing this? Why don't they stick to? And then I suddenly think, well, what about English? I mean, you think of a simple phrase in English and then take it to Aberdeen, to Glasgow, to Liverpool, to London, and it sounds completely different everywhere you go.
100%. But that's the glory of language, though, isn't it? The sort of
Yeah,
like the regional differences. Yeah, yeah. I realise I've gone over a little bit. I do apologise. But unless anyone's got any more questions, I think Irene will wrap up.
Yeah, that sounds great. And I'm going to stop the recording now. So first of all, thank you, Charlie, for a brilliant presentation. And thank you all for joining us and being here. And I'm just going to stop.